You're tuned in to Death Metal Chronicles. Get ready for some fun. We're about to talk about awesome libertarianism today. Libertarianism is a lot of fun. Tell you what, I'm one, and I'm drinking some winter white ale from Bell's. Got the last of it you probably could ever get for the entire season, so I'm a pretty happy guy. This stuff's pretty epic. So, libertarianism. For me, I think libertarianism is one of those subjects that's very misunderstood. Misunderstood in the sense that you can take it to extremes. So, I really think with libertarianism, you can't take sides with any sort of political ideology. Where libertarianism, I don't think necessarily, in my opinion, is a political ideal. It's a human ideal. When you think about how people live in society, either one person will talk about how you need the state to do one thing, or that you should not have the state to do something. I think libertarianism is much more, and it's a lot broader, because you've got minarchists, you've got anarchists, you have republicrats, who are either Republicans or Democrats or both, who think that they are libertarians in the sense that they speak for everyone. So this is where we could dive into some fun. So, according to Wikipedia, libertarianism is defined as a political philosophy that upholds liberty as the highest political end. I like that political end part because then you can get into Ayn Rand, who was a person of many flaws in her personal life, and also within her life as a media mogul. She wrote Anthem first, then ended up writing Fountainhead, which is a gargantuan book. And then Atlas Shrugged, which most of you probably are familiar with. Atlas Shrugged basically talked about a woman who was the daughter in a train corporation that was going under and needed to be salvaged. And for her to salvage it, she kills the entire idea, starts her own company, saves the railroad, and I won't give away the ending if you have not read the book, so I'll leave it there. The private ownership of the means of production. Now, private property is something that I think is the main ideal to most of us when we have the idea of libertarianism, where you either own your body outright if you do not believe that there are gods or a god, that you own your body, and if you own your body, then it means you have the right to life, and your right to life derives from your being an image of human creation. Now, if you're a Christian or other type of theist who believes in a god or multiple gods, then you probably believe in libertarianism that your rights derive from God, not from government, and that those rights are innate within your body because God has indwelled you as your creator who created you. Thus, you being created in his image, then you are owned by God. So I guess that kind of defines libertarianism in two senses, where either you believe that your body is your own, or your body is your own and it's owned by God. So those are the two sides of things, depending on what you may or may not believe. This is where we get into private ownership and the ownership of your labor. So if you mix your hands into something, so right now I'm recording a YouTube video. I'm physically clicking buttons and I'm physically speaking. I will probably spend about 2 hours editing this video, and I have mixed my labor into thus YouTube channel. So when YouTube monetizes my videos, if I ever choose to do that, which I have not chosen yet, they will give me money for the work that I have done because I mixed my labor within the YouTube video. Well, it's the same thing if you are a guy who fixes cars, a mechanic of some sorts. Maybe you're a human mechanic. You open somebody up, you fix something, you put things back together, and then they heal. Well, you're mixing your labor, and physically mixing your labor with another person. That should be maybe one of the highest ideals of what a person could be. Then a third party comes involved. This is where libertarianism, I think, is majorly defined with taxation. So there are some people, such as the minarchists, who, as in the Libertarian Party and other people, they have the belief that it's probably the best idea to mix their libertarianism within politics to achieve an end of statelessness to an extent, and I think a lot of that may or may not be involved with them trying to come up with a plan to figure things out, with being involved with the government to a higher extent. So when you have Gary Johnson, who was in the 2000 and I do not remember the number, who's a Libertarian Party political candidate, and he was not necessarily up against Ron Paul, but in a way up against Ron Paul and up against the other Republican primary candidates, who basically Gary Johnson was echoing the same exact things that Ron Paul was. Although Ron Paul was running as a Republican, Gary Johnson believes in minarchism, or at least to his end that those ways of doing things may be better. So he tried to help decriminalize marijuana in New Mexico. He was also fighting for the freedom of your body, of putting drugs in your body, maybe mixing your income by being a prostitute and selling your body. Whether or not you feel that that's good or not is not the issue. It's the dependency of if you own your body. So you have those people, and those people are minarchists, and they believe that if you use the government to perpetuate liberty, then I guess it works. I'm not exactly completely approving, but it may be something that can help further on libertarianism. Something that I think that a lot of people have not talked about within libertarianism is the Christianity aspect of being set apart. I find it interesting that a lot of Christians, which I am a Christian, I do find it interesting that many Christians do not take their political ideals and think about them seriously enough with their faith. So, if you're a Christian and you believe that God made you in His image, and you believe that Jesus Christ is the fulfillment of all sin, and sin includes murder, which I think is very hard. Murder, the act of killing someone, you have to look in the Talmud if this is a very, very, very complex thing, that if you search the Talmud about murder, you'll get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of writing about what defines murder, of the original text of the Torah. So, with Christianity, when Jesus said in Romans 12:2, which I think was written by Paul, if I'm not mistaken, or John. It's been a very, very, very long time since I was in divinity school. Do not be conformed to the pattern of the world. So, the pattern of the world of the time was that the Jews were being subjugated by the Roman government, and the Roman government was in charge of the lives of the Jews and decided what they did, where they went, how they did things. They also were taxed as a foreign government, taxing the Jews at the time. So every couple of months or couple of years, you would hear of a new ruler or some new uprising or a new set of people trying to overthrow the Roman government in Israel and the surrounding areas, because obviously it was a ginormous imperial power and they were the domain of the land. So the Romans brought different worship to the Jews along with all the other people that were there. Romans 12:2 says, "And do not be conformed to this world, and be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, and which is good and acceptable and perfect." And the belief that you are not of the world. So the belief that you are here, but you may or may not be of the people here. This is something I find is very interesting, that I've only heard one Anabaptist preacher speak of mixing libertarianism with Christianity. Because most people I hear will use, I think most Republicans I hear will say, it's not okay for a woman and a woman to marry, or a man and a man, or two men and a woman, or two women and a man, because they believe that marriage is something that should be controlled by the government. This kind of angers me. Number one, if you are a libertarian, or you believe in some libertarian ideals, and you are calling for the state to be involved in someone's marriage, that is not libertarianism. It's pretty simple. I don't understand where people get this, but it is certainly not something that should be proposed by even Republicans or Democrats or whoever it is. Involving yourself in someone else's association with whom they associate with should not be approved of in any way, or the disapproval of people. So I got into a 3-hour-long conversation with a friend, who will be named nameless, where we were talking about discrimination and how discrimination should be legal. I am not saying that people should be discriminated against by the government. That is different. The current governments that we have already discriminate against people. They discriminate against gay people. They discriminate against people who are transgendered, who may or may not have a gender. They discriminate against people who may or may not have developmental disabilities and then force them to be medicated or to seek medical attention. Say if you are someone who believes in a specific faith or different ideal, and you do not wish to go to a medical facility that has non-believing doctors that you don't believe in their faith. The current system of government we have, they would require you to go through an ER, and then the ER just does whatever they want to you, and then if you need a blood transfusion, you get blood transfused, and then you may or may not live after that. Discrimination is already existent, and it is something that people are very misunderstood by. If you've heard libertarians talk about discrimination and how the Civil Rights Act of the 60s should not have been allowed to be law, what people are meaning is that no one should be forced to associate with another person. So if you're a business and you have a business, you have a church, maybe you have a car service that's only cash, and you decide that you only want to serve Christians, or you only want to serve monotheists, or you only want to serve Nepalese Gurkhas with cool swords. You are not allowed to do that due to the Civil Rights Act. Well, I do understand that the 60s was a time in which people were segregated by the government in the schools, perpetuated through that system. And most of the country of America was not segregated. Only specific parts of America were segregated, but there was racial tension due to the government enforcing it. Places that did not have those systems, such as Ohio, Canada, Maine, Connecticut, just keep going north, go to Russia, I guess, did not have those systems, and people were free to move there. There was no need to have National Guard soldiers come down to an area to enforce things at the point of a gun. Now, here's something that's interesting. Maybe the United States government could have said to that specific state, the specific towns, any place that actually had segregation, no, we will not give you money if you enforce these laws, but you can continue with them. So under the current system, they could have decided, no, we're not going to give you money, either you're going to do what you want to do or you don't. And then the people of that area could still move, could still go places, could still do whatever they needed to do. Racism was not ended by the Civil Rights Act. Racism is still currently going on today. I think if you will talk to anyone who went through the 60s and protested and did everything they possibly could do, civil action and the actions of the people doing nonviolent means to bring awareness actually did cause many things to be broken to a better end, and to make the system not as solid. It perplexes me to think, though, that to this day we still have people who decide at the government level, and any of those levels, that they think that the government should be involved in marriage. I completely am. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If you have the freedom to associate, you should have the freedom to decide who you want to hang out with. Like, I hang out with a bunch of Bolivian people and people from all over the world, Croatians, Macedonians, you name it, I hang out with them and they're my friends. I don't see how I don't like the gentleman, although there are some pretty foxy men out there. I don't see how the government should have any doings with the fact of if I want to have a relationship with a guy, I don't see how that's any of their business. That doesn't make any sense to me. You can't come up with any justification, in my opinion, that the government shouldn't be involved. Now, here's where discrimination comes into effect, or into an ideal. Churches, maybe a single pastor, maybe a person who believes that there are no gods, a chief priest of the church of the ground, of the sky, of Satan, for all I care. Who is to say that that person cannot make a binding contract with 2 people, or 3 people, or 7 people, if they want to have a lot of fun, to have relationships with these people, and they decide that they want to live in a house together, they want to mix their income, they want to be able to have these people take care of them when they're hurt, and if they go to a doctor, they get to decide about their bodies, and if they what medical treatment should be involved, if any, should be involved. This is very important. I mean, we still don't have this to this day. Today, the state and the people who support the state, the Republicans, the Democrats, the Libertarians, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, just name the party, still think that the government should be involved in marriage, which means that they believe that government should be involved in associations and discrimination. Racism is ended by people agreeing with other people that people who are humans should not be discriminated against. It just angers me. Makes me mad. Makes me very mad. Woohoo! Here's a good one. Taxation, donations, and a contract society. So when I talk about mixing your income, and you have made something, you made a YouTube video, you made a car, you printed a 3D gun, or you took gun parts, you put them together, and you want to sell those gun parts to make a gun and sell that gun. Here's a really, really, really good one for any gun owner out there who's a Republican or Democrat, or Libertarian Party person. If you believe that you have the right to your income, that you mix your labor, you mix your hands, you do something, you make something, it is your own. It's your voice maybe on YouTube. It's, whatever. And you go with the person, maybe you don't even know the person. Maybe the person's in Russia. Maybe they're in France, Switzerland. Big ups to my Switzerland friends. You sell that item to that person. A third party, the government, says, hey, you didn't build that. And says that we want money for what you made. That should rile every person who believes in freedom. I just cannot understand how that makes any sense. If you made something and you own it, if you own your life, you don't believe in God. You own your body because when you were born, your life means something and your body is owned by you. Or you're a Christian, or you're a Muslim, or you're a Buddhist, and you believe that God has created your body in His image and likeness. You believe that to be true. So how is it possible that a third party could come to you and say, give me money for what you have or what you made, or I will put you in jail, and if you resist, then you'll have more charges charged on you. And then if you defend yourself, then, well, we know what happens after that. How is that even possible? That makes no sense. Even in the society we have today, there is a way of doing things which does not involve taxes. But how will you pay for the roads? How will you pay for the roads? How will you pay for the roads? I can just hear the trolls just trolling on down the comments. The roads. Well, if you want to learn more about road production and how, in a free society that does not have taxation, how roads could be paved for, all that jazz, Walter Block on Mises.org, MISES.org, has already written, has many videos on YouTube about this. He is the roads guy. He has the entire libertarian anarchist theory of how you make roads without having taxation, which then I conclude as a contractor. I make money off of a contract. Company, even a person sometimes, who even knows, puts money in my account, gives me a plane ticket, I go somewhere, I do work. Whatever that work is that's defined in the contract. It says, you need to be here at this time, you need to go here at this time, you need to wake up at this time, you need to talk to these people, and you need to defend people from being harmed. Well, someone gives me a contract, and with that contract, they put money in my account. Every month, I do the job, and they give me money. Technically, I'm working as a soldier, sort of, kind of, for the United States government, kind of, but for a company who's privately owned by a couple of people, maybe it's multiple people, maybe it's investors that are involved, and they want their things protected. So they pay me to go somewhere, and I go somewhere, and I protect things, and I do work for them. Well, if I'm doing work for someone, and they're paying me to go somewhere to defend things, as a person who's approved and is going somewhere to do that, it proves the point that you do not need a conscripted army, or an army as we have it now, which is still conscription, even though that there is not an actual draft these days. But, as my next story will involve, I mean that in society today, we do not need a standing army. There's no reason for it. You can get together with KBR, and KBR and Halliburton can raise an army of one, and all shall sing and sing the songs of old army infantry songs, and raise war and destroy things to protect people. There's no reason that you need a standing army. Not today. That just doesn't equate to any common sense at all. I don't get it, but that's just me. Right to travel. So the other week I needed to update my driver's license. Oh yeah. Getting the man's papers to do the man's work. Well, I'm there doing my thing, signing documents, making moves, getting crazy off the rip. I was there signing the documents, and this kid, I don't even know the guy's name, never even heard it. White kid, black hair down to his shoulders. Anybody else like a complete dirtbag. But he's just a dude hanging out, getting his license, doing his thing. Kid was 25 years old. At random, the DMV person, driver's motor vehicles, if you're not from America, it's called the DMV. It's the place where you get your driver's license at. Offhandedly, the DMV attendant told him, oh, well, since you're 25 years old and you have not signed up for selective service, we are signing you up into selective service. And the kid just said, oh, okay, fine, whatever. Why is his life worth nothing? It just makes no sense. Here, this kid, 25 years old, has everything in front of his life. He could go out there, he could help something move off road. He could move to another country and start up a company that ends up developing the cure for cancer because he found a plant. I don't know. In America, you have to sign up for the Selective Service, which is the draft. And this 25-year-old kid, who has his entire life ahead of him, who has his freedom, he has his health, his fairly decent shape, why does he have to sign up for the Selective Service? Does he not have the right to his own body, the freedom of his movement, the freedom to mix his income? Why is he designated as a person who has to sign up for the Selective Service just because he's 25 years old? That should be an affront and should make everyone scared. Because our grandparents had to protest the Vietnam War day in, day out, 12 years of utter and brutal hell. The untotal amounts of deaths of American citizens, of French citizens, of the Indonesian, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, just name the country that America was operating in, because the Vietnam War is just a name of Vietnam War. There were so many places America was operating in that time period, and all of these people had to protest day in, day out, constantly, to bring their sons home because they were forced at gunpoint, and if you didn't, then you would go to jail, and then if you didn't want to go to jail, then you could go over there and fight. Where the death toll was probably, who even knows, 10,000, even one a month is just utter and complete destruction. And to this day, we still have nothing to show for Vietnam. It didn't support anything. It didn't make anyone else more free. And yet, this kid had to sign up for the Selective Service. I say there's a contractor society of non-conscripted soldiers, like myself, who will greatly go to a place, destroy things, defend people for money. There's no reason. And as well, if you wanted to get rid of the standing army and you wanted to have a way to have intelligence services, to have military services, counter-proliferation things, assets to be able to stop bad people from hurting people, you could have targeted people go out, target bad guys, capture them, bring them back, give them justice. Or you have a contract of guys who use these machines that shoot things in the air to defend you from mortars. To this day, New York City, DC, just name the major city, of populations of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions in certain places, still do not have the ability to protect themselves against mortars. What the hell? Yeah. The technology is there, and there are names for these systems. If you look at the Navy and look into their history about the systems they would use to counter mortars, you can look that up, and that'll be on the webs. That stuff still does not protect Americans, and that only costs $500,000 or less for each machine, and then you can have a guy operate it for like $50,000 if you want to do. So it's BS. Yeah, you don't need a government to do that. You can contract out some guys, and they can do it. Man, it should make you think. Ooh, here's a fun topic. You ready? Edward Snowden. Edward Joseph Snowden. I didn't know his name was Joseph in the middle. It's kind of cool. It's very biblical. American computer specialist. Hey, he's not much older than me. He's 2 years older than me. About 31? 30? 30. So, this guy, contractor for Booz Allen Hamilton. Not exactly much difference these days between a regular government employee or someone who's a contractor. Pretty much the same. Doesn't exactly matter. Just depends on where your paycheck's coming from, and even that's kind of weird these days. I'm not even going to explain who he is, because you already know who he is. Basically, he released classified information. Classified material is what they're calling it in WikiLeaks. Wikipedia, I'm sorry. His current releases now are the Prism, the X Keyscore, the Tempora, and Mass Collection of cell phone communications data. What Mr. Stone did was against his non-disclosure agreements. Releasing actual classified material, which who exactly knows which parts are actually classified and which parts aren't, and currently which ones are or not. You'd probably have to read through each document and see what stuff actually is classified. Even to this day, which actually is interesting, that the classifications of documents that are on WikiLeaks may or may not actually still be classified, which is completely ridiculous for those of us who have clearances. We're not really allowed to read them. Hilarious. Mr. Snowden did was against his non-disclosures, was against his contracts of his job. Releasing classified material, whether you're a contractor or you're a government employee, can hurt people, can cause missions to need to be completely scrapped to get people out of where they are that are doing the things that they're doing. I'm not 100% of what actual targeted releasings that he did. What I do find interesting is that it's even in the news at all. And the fact that the American public is still not calling for the end of the companies that have been spoken about in these leaks. So when you have companies that are involved with the collection of your data to give to governments, whatever government it is, or even other companies to use in correlation against you, is probably a bad thing. Now this is even at the ISP levels as well, so even with the telephone communications, with your internet communications, these are all at the backbone level of things. So when you mean by backbone, if you're not exactly a person who maybe has even heard about it, the backbone is a series of tubes. It's part of the computer network infrastructure, which the infrastructure is basically tied together. It's tying together multiple networks at one time, so that when you click into Google or you click on to Yahoo, that you're going somewhere. So when you ask Google, where do I find, the next Panera bread or whatever it is, that it's going to give you the information that you're looking for from multiple sources. The same thing that exactly was what happens with your data for cell phone communications. If you need to call another person, you have to call another person, which may or may not be located in a different area than you live, or in a different set of towers that you live. So you need a backbone to be able to handle that. Well, on the backbone is where everything is stored, everything is collected, and in a case of most of the government systems that are collecting your data, Prism, X keyscore, I actually need to look this up, I've never looked into it, formerly known as the Secret Communication System, used by the NSA for analyzing internet data about foreign nationals around the world. That's BS. Now that we know that it's not about foreign nationals, it's about everyone in the entire world, is run jointly by other agencies, including Australia's Defence Signals Directorate, the New Zealand Government Communications Security Bureau. I should let that simmer. So it was actually Edward Snowden that revealed that in the Sydney Morning Herald. That's interesting. According to Der Spiegel, X keyscore has the ability to retroactively import several days worth of queued metadata and the content of communications. This article lists terms entered into the search engine as an example of metadata the X keyscore is able to intercept. Oh, that just goes to there. So that should really make you think. You know, if you have a foreign government being allowed to spy on American citizens, that's 100% against the Constitution. That's pretty simple. If our government knows about it, obviously. Now, if an American citizen's inside of Australia, you're subject to their laws, they're doing their thing, whatever. But that should let that speak to how our current way of doing things is not safe, and also not safe for ordinary people or even bad people who may be doing bad things, that these companies are being allowed to give information, which means that they have access to that information too. So what if you're a contractor, what if you're a government employee, and people at a company are collecting your information and then distributing that to other governments or to people who may or may not want to do you harm? That should definitely let something ring within you that that's not okay and comfortable. If you're conducting military operations on behalf of the United States government as a contractor, or you are a special forces guy and you have a regular cell phone, and you go in and out of the country and go places, your information is being tracked by a third party, fourth party in some situations. That information is then being within their government servers at the Defense Signals Directorate or the Government Communications Security Bureau, or the French or Germans or whoever. Well, if you go through that country and they may or may not have people who are trying to bribe them to give them information on American citizens, well, you go through Germany and that person's been bribed, well, what's going to happen to you? Not cool, not legal, not even possible. My last episode, I talked about Black Phone by Silent Circle. I'm pretty impressed. I do think that it's something that could really, really, really help a lot of people. Black Phone is brought to you by Silent Circle, by Mr. Zimmerman. He's doing, what he has to do. And speaking of Special Forces guy, he's an ex-Navy SEAL. Put that in there. Let the bell ring 1,000 chimes, I guess, whatever their thing is. It's a fully encrypted smartphone. I was trying to find earlier what actual encryption it is. I don't think it's 264-bit. I think it's actually higher than that. I guess their server is going to be in Switzerland. Swiss data laws do not allow them to disclose anything of your data, so it's kind of cool. I'm definitely impressed. The problem with this is I don't see it as something that can actually prevent these current systems from intercepting your phone calls. That's just not possible. If you've looked into any sort of encryption, all of the encryption keys are owned already by the government. So they already have the keys. So if they have the keys, they can decrypt it, and that's just... I get that's a cool idea, but... Oh, they've got a Vimeo video, Introduction to the Black Phone. Yeah, I still don't see anything with the actual bit rate for the encryption. Yeah, that's something interesting. Check it out. I think with this whole libertarianism thing, what I'm talking about, I really want to put out there to people is that if you're on the phone and you're a contractor and you're doing work for the government, or you're a special forces guy or whatever, you should learn how to keep your personal security and your operational security intact. That includes person, places, people, things, where you're going, what you're doing, why you're going there, things like that. If you're using a phone system and that phone system is not secure, it's not a good plan to put your information out there, and you should definitely think twice about not putting it out over a non-secure thing. You would think that this would be more prevalent within people, but I see people doing this all the time on Gmail or Facebook or whatever, talking about where they've been, what they've been doing, what bases they've worked at, things like that. Putting their face out there in front of the pictures, with pictures of their base and stuff like that. Putting their houses on Facebook and stuff like that. I mean, not necessarily to protect yourself against the government, which, I mean, hey, whatever. If you want to do that, it's up to you. But maybe protecting yourself against that one Indian friend who may or may not have friends that are in Pakistan, who may or may not have been hurt by the United States government or whatever. Take it the most extreme you can think of. Maybe you pissed off somebody's cousin one day because you tried to date him or something. Even that. And if you move to a new apartment and nobody sees the thing to your apartment and you're never really talking about it, it would actually take that person more time to think about where you live and find you and hurt you. So probably a good plan to, like, you know, not put up pictures of yourself in front of your house, in front of your base, and with your company t-shirt on, you know, simple stuff like that, because it's probably a good idea to not, you know, put information out to the point where you're going to get yourself hurt, because that's just dumb. So, blackphone.ch. Yep. The classification process. Classifying data. can involve many different things. And this could be movements of people going places. This could be your base. It could even be the name of the company that you work for because they have a contract with the United States government. Which a lot of times even companies won't even tell you that that's classified too. So that kind of helps alleviate problems. Or if you don't actually work for the company that you think you're working for, that works out pretty well too. It can be sensitive information, and sensitive information really could be anything. I mean, it could literally be your own name. It could be even distributing the names of the people that you work with. I mean, sometimes people just don't need to know stuff. Part of it I find interesting is that the classification of American life has been even more perpetuated with, instead of drafting a bunch of people, having a citizenry of contractors, an army of the billing, and where more and more people now have clearances than ever before in American history. And so this also really makes life more difficult, where things are just censored within the United States population, where you can live next to people or live with people and them never know what you do, them never have access to even your own personal data. This weirdness of not being able to go certain places, not being able to date certain people, such as Chinese people or Russian people, because if you do, then you'll be audited, or a new security investigation will happen. Within American life, this is something that has now almost come to the vernacular of every person that knows an American. But this rule and compartmented constraints, according to Wiki, compartmented constraints on access, just access into human life in a way. U.S. restricted data, humans, you know, I mean, just put humans in front of it. It's just kind of silly. There are reasons that you don't want people to know of certain things, but a lot of stuff these days is just, the reason why it's classified is probably illegal. I mean, hence why WikiLeaks, all their documents are probably still classified, and any person with a security clearance would get fired for reading it. It's just complete, utter chaos. Classification process needs to be changed. Troop movements? No. Should the American people know what the American government is searching about them? Probably. Be a good plan. Be a good first step. Most classification is important, and obviously it's to protect people. That's the reason for it, although now it's morphed into basically anything that the American government doesn't want the American people to know. And in the liberty mindset, that should not be approved of, and any company complicit should be completely banned from being allowed to sell to the American people. Or they should be allowed maybe, but they shouldn't be in business anymore. Name your ISP that's been involved, and maybe you shouldn't pay that company anymore. be kind of a good plan. You could just, stop paying them to collect your data, and then limit your and then band camp you. We'll get talking about band capping in one of the further episodes. I've got a chief technology guy. We'll be discussing obfuscation, encryption, Linux systems, Unix systems. Basically some fun stuff. I think the viewers will enjoy it. You guys can give your ideas. Send me emails. Send me Facebook messages, comments, and all that jazz. And hope you guys enjoy this. It was a fairly long, drawn out, and titillating conversation about liberty. I do think liberty is defined about what you're allowed and what you are not allowed to do, and if you're not hurting other people, screw it. You should be allowed to do what the hell you want. Doesn't mean you should go out and go stab your neighbor. No. Should you be able to buy really cool knives? Hell yes. Should you be able to inject other people who didn't agree with you with bleach or crack? No. Should you be allowed to do it? Hell yes. Buy guns? Buy lots of them. I don't know. Don't buy them if you don't want to. You should have a choice whether or not you want to buy an atomic bomb. That's an iffy one. I don't think any libertarian has a good one on that. You want to buy a car without a sensor that tells you put on your seatbelt? Yeah, that'll be a further topic. Ralph Nader and his ridiculousness. So you've been listening to the Death Metal Chronicles, a show not necessarily about death metal, and necessarily not exactly a chronicle. Yeah, enjoy.